Welcome to episode 108 of the show with no name. I'm your humble host, Nick, and today we're going to be doing a historical revisit episode of this little old cemetery in the middle of nowhere outside of Creston, Washington. This cemetery goes by the name of Brents Cemetery. Let's get into this. The reason I'm calling this episode a historical revisit episode is because if you look at my channel, episode 15, Forgotten Cemetery, I've covered this cemetery before, but at the time I did not know the name or anything about the cemetery like I do now. And so in this episode, I plan to rectify that. This cemetery is located on a hill just off of Mountain View Road, and it's surrounded by wheat fields and one big tree being the marker for the cemetery. 4 families had members that were buried here that I know of, and they were the Halversons, the Houstons, the Stukeys, and the Hales. This cemetery looks like it had a fence at one time here. There are also several unknown graves here too. And if you've watched the first episode I did on this cemetery, you would see that there was at one time a few grave markers for the Halverson family members that were buried here. But sadly, upon returning, I could no longer find them. They have been swallowed up by the earth and time. Carl and Lois Houston buried their baby boys, Ralph and Vernon, here in the early 1900s. Ralph was just 3 months old, and Vernon was 2 years old. But I could no longer find their grave markers here. I'm gonna spend a few moments now talking about the Hale family. They had a couple children pass away here too, and I was able to find their obituaries. Frances Margaret Hale, infant child of Luke and Mary Hale of Creston, was born on October 13th, 1894, and died on February 14th, 1895, aged 4 months and 1 day. The funeral services were conducted by Reverend A.B. Court at the Creston Schoolhouse at 10 o'clock a.m. on February 16th, after which the remains were followed by a large procession of friends to the Brents Cemetery, where the interment was made. The family have the sympathy of their many friends in this, their time of deepest sorrow. This is the second child Mr. and Mrs. Hale have been so unfortunate as to lose. Freddie Hale was born near Creston on February 9th, 1890, and died at the same place on February 16th, 1890, just 7 days old. Sleep on, sweet babes, and take thy rest. God calls those whom he thinks best. 'Tis sad to give thee up so young in death, by parents and friends who love thee best. We remember that in thine holy book we see, thou hast said, suffer little children to come unto me. Those little hands, which we so much did love, are beckoning us home to heaven above. God alone can conceive the pleasure there when we meet our friends and kindred dear. I wasn't able to find their headstones in this cemetery either. These are some photos that I took a few years ago of some of the old Halverson headstones that are still out here. They're just completely overran now, and I couldn't find them. This is Susan Stukey's headstone, and it's rumored that she was moved to another cemetery to be laid at rest with her husband, but for whatever reason her old headstone still remains here. I hope you enjoyed my historical documentation of Brents Cemetery. Thank you.